Hello ladies and gentlemen, and in this video I am going to show you how I edited this photo, and honestly, you will not believe how it started. I'll see you after this. Hello ladies and gentlemen, in today's video I am going to be taking you through Photoshop and Lightroom, and actually we're going to be doing a little bit of work in Luminar, but if you want to follow along you don't need Luminar to be able to do this. In order to edit a photo of a lion that I got at the West Midlands Safari Park that was featured in the last video. But just before we do that, please do make sure that if you're new here and you'd like to see more videos like this, then please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell icon and the all notifications tab that comes up. That way you're going to get every single video that I put out, and honestly there is stuff that hopefully in the coming weeks that are going to be really, really valuable to you. That's what I'm trying to put out here. Anyway, let's get into this. Okay, so in last week's video, we were at the West Midlands Safari Park and I had a picture of a lion, which I showed at the end. Now, that lion was heavily photoshopped in order to make sure that it looked right, that it was a good, compelling, engaging image, the sort of image that I wanted to produce. Today, I'm going to show you how I did it. Let's jump into Lightroom to start off with. Here we go. Okay, Lightroom. First of all, I'm going to take you through this basic settings that we've got here. So look, this is the image. This is where I started out. And like you can see, you know, it has none of the drama. A lot of the drama of that image that you saw last week was from the sky. And there's no sky in this. And there's this line here which doesn't look very good. So, okay, we've got a lot of work to do here, if you can see. First of all, let's have a look at the profile. Is Pro Neg 2 if you're using a Fuji system. These camera matching profiles are absolutely phenomenal, and I recommend them every time. If you're not using a color profile for anything else, for an artistic reason, those absolutely spot on. So we've got little bits of exposure and contrast compensation there, not very much. We've got our main thing that we do here with the highlights and shadows, highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up. I don't always do that with animals, but I have done it in this case because I tried it and I liked it. But one of the big things that we've done here, as well as pushing the texture and clarity up because we want a nice sharp image, a nice sort of punchy sharp image, I've put this dehaze down as well. Now, let me show you what that does. That's before, and I think I was about 7. So, well, I'll just type in -7. That's after, okay? So before and after. And it's not a lot, but what it's doing, as you can see, it's thinning out some of the shadows a little bit. And I quite like that. I really like the way that looks. We've got our tone curve down here. Now, I might have shown you this before. This is on a 10 at the bottom here. And then all that just, again, it just smooths those shadows out a little bit. Really like doing that. And the other thing I've done here is I played around with the colors a little bit just to make them fit the thing that I wanted. So if I turn that off, you can see where we were. There's a little bit of green in there. There's probably a little bit too much yellow in there. Turn that back on again. We've got a better color sky. We've got a better color lion, and that's where we need to start. The secret to doing this is to take the color that you want to play with and then use the sliders sort of, you know, in order to make that work. So with the blue here, I started out like that and it was rather light. So I take it down -28 and it just brings some of that color back in. Now, actually, in reality, we're not going to be using that because I'm going to be replacing the sky a little bit later on. But where you've got the green down here, which is -63, look at what happens. We can bring this back in. But it really interferes with the lion itself. So if I take that out again, there you go. You've got a nice tree behind the lion, but the lion is actually separated a little bit from the background. So that's when you would make decisions like this. And I have gone over stuff like that on previous videos. I really don't want to spend too much time going over the Lightroom stuff because actually the Photoshop stuff is more important. Sharpening at 80%, which is fairly standard. I've got my masking turned on. So masking there is masking out that much. So you've got none of the sky, but all of the details. And that's about it. it. I don't think I've got a bit of a vignette on there, but actually the vignette ends up not mattering very much when we get it into Photoshop. So that's where we're starting off. Where do we want to get to? Where do we want to end up? Well, if you saw the actual edit, we want to end up kind of there. Now, I don't know how I did this. Usually I save all of my edits that I do in Photoshop as a PSD file, and I can go back to them and I can look and see, okay, I've done this and I've changed this bit here. But we're going to try and get something akin to that. And what you'll see when we actually take this into Photoshop, which I'm going to start doing now, is that you will, you'll get, sorry, let me just do this, edit in Photoshop, there we go, and let it do its thing. Right, what you're going to see is that we're going to start to play around with the colors a little bit. That we're going to replace that background for a start, which is a major thing. We've got a few things to clean up before we actually do this. But that means that we're going to have a really kind of dramatic picture. Okay, so let's jump back over into Lightroom here. And what we've got, background image, I'm going to right click and duplicate layer. What I don't like when I'm using Photoshop is to not save the kind of the previous step, if you see what I mean. So when I first import something, I always duplicate it just in case I change the duplication, which I'm going to do in this instance. I want to be able to go back to it without relying on the history brush. So the first thing we have to do is take this clone stamp, and I'm using clone just because it's a bit easier, that's all. There's a little bit of a lens thing on there, I think. No, that's just a mark on the screen. Okay, we'll take this. We're going to get rid of this. Going to get rid of this fern. Try again. Okay, we're going to get rid of this as well. So what I want to do is I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. If you've never seen this before, you can use your square bracket keys to make the brushes bigger and smaller. If you're new to Photoshop, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to click up here. So holding down the Alt key, I think it's the Apple key on Mac. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't use a Mac. So I'm going to hold that down until I get the target up. Click up here. Then I'm going to make one click down here. I don't want to get the line in. There we go. And then hold down Shift. And then over here, click again. And it's going to make a line of that clone. Very, very useful. We're now going to go into here a little bit. Like so. And we're going to use this clone tool. Now, the reason I'm using clone and I'm not using the healing brush, because a lot of people will do this using the healing brush, is that the healing brush has this, let me show you, unfortunate thing. If I were to take this area and I wanted to heal this area there and I did that, because it's sampling colors from the lion as well, it makes a kind of, it's like a smudge. We don't want that. We want a nice sharpish line. So I'm going to come up here, we'll take that, we'll wipe that out. Now, one thing I will say, I'm using the original file for this, and usually when I'm doing sharpening and stuff like that, I don't use the original file. I will use the enhanced mode in Photoshop, or I'll transcode it using Xtrans, and that gets rid of what you can see here actually. Oh, I've gone too far. You can see the sort of the worms coming in here because I've kind of over sharpened it a bit. Now the sharpening that I put on was right for the enhanced or the transcoded image, but it wasn't right for the straight out of the camera image that I'm using today. Having said that, it'll be perfectly fine for our tutorial. And I would suggest, if you don't have the Xtrans software, which is very good, use Adobe's enhance stuff, because it makes a hell of a difference. It really does. Okay, pretty happy with that. Over here, I want to get rid of that like that. Now, the reason that I'm doing this, I talked in a video a few weeks ago about mise-en-scène, and the whole idea of mise-en-scène is to get on in the frame the thing that you want in the frame, usually without distractions, without anything in the frame which is going to draw your eye to something else. So this little bit of bush down there, I don't mind so much because it's not actually distracting me. These bits up here, they're not actually distracting me. But what is distracting me is what in God's name has happened here? No, that's on the original picture. Never mind. Okay, I don't know what this is. Okay, so I found out what that was, and now I feel rather silly. I had left some clone stamps in Lightroom on the picture because I basically copied what I did from one picture to another so that I had the right thing in Lightroom. Ignore that. This is what the picture should look like with this nice little bit over there. Right. Okay. I have done that. I've made that. I've made everything that we're going to do. Now, we're talking about mise-en-scène. What I've got here is a clean version of the picture. I can't go back to the original because, like a moron, I've just made all the alterations on the original layer because I'm now that something's gone wrong, my head has exploded. That's exactly what's happened. Okay, so we've got our picture to that state, pretty good state to be in, but we need to take this out. We need to do something a little bit more to it before we start doing the rest of the processing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that layer, go up to Filter. We're going to go to Skylum Software and then Luminar AI. And I know that some of you won't have Luminar AI. You don't have to use Luminar AI for this. This isn't really a tutorial about how to use AI in the first place. I'm just going to make a few changes in here that I think you will see why I'm doing it when I actually do it. But I've found this in several occasions to be a brilliant use of Luminar. Without actually using a lot of the functions that people get worried about. The fact that we're going to do all of that in Photoshop doesn't matter. So here we are in Luminar, and all we're going to do here, click on the details thing. And what I really love in Luminar, and we can do a few things in here. You can add in a bit of accent. Let the software do the thing for you. We'll add in a touch of structure, just a little touch. But you see the numbers that I'm using here. Look, there's 7, 8, 6, 5. They're not particularly big. This is the bit, the real secret that I really love. So this is the enhanced details panel. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to push the small details up to about 6, the medium details up to kind of double that or triple that sometimes, and the large details up a little bit more than that. And what that does is sharpen your image in a way that just a really satisfying image sharpening that Photoshop doesn't quite do because you've got more control for these details. So maybe I want to put this down to there and have that going the other way, but it's still making I'll take a while for it to process now. It's still actually pulling out some sharpness, and we can still see the lines in here. But you can then go into denoise, and you can process the sort of the denoise thing like you'd normally do, and you ultimately get a sharper image with less noise in it, which is really cool. I don't think that Photoshop quite does this in the same way, and so therefore you don't quite get the same results from it, which is a shame in some respects. But actually, I think that what Luminar does in terms of sharpening is really interesting. Really love it. Okay, so we will apply that. Please ignore any sound that might be outside. I don't know if you can hear it or not. This is going to export and bring itself back into Photoshop. And then we get to do some of the exciting stuff, which is really my reason for making this video in the first place, because you want to see the exciting stuff. Okay, back in Photoshop, and I wanted to show you a quick before and after of this, because I think you'll find it quite interesting. So this is what we've got back from Luminar. Watch as I turn this layer on and off. That's the original layer. That's after Luminar. That's the original layer. That's after Luminar. Look at how much sharpness that can introduce into an image. And that's going to be important a bit later on when we add the final effect on this. But I'll show you that in a little bit. What I will do, though, at the moment, I'm going to duplicate this background layer again. And what I'm going to do is put a layer mask on this one. Layer mask reveal all, and because we don't want everything to be tack sharp in this image, what I quite like about this is this bit is nice and kind of what would you call it? It's sort of subtly shaded. So we are going to take a brush like so. We're going to change it to white. No, we're not. We're going to change it to black. And we're just going to paint out that bit there, nice and simple. Then we're going to make that brush much smaller again, hit the X, and make sure that our lion, the bit that we want to be tack sharp, is tack sharp. And I don't mind so much about his feet down there, but the rest of it I want to be nice and sharp. Okay. Now we're going to merge up. Now, I do this using ProPanel now. I mentioned this before. It's a really interesting, quick, lovely way of doing this. Stamp up, and it merges those two layers together so that you've got exactly what we're working with. Okay, I can turn all of those layers off because we don't need them anymore. And then we can go into the thing that... this is the controversial bit. We're going to do a sky replacement. So there's a reason that I'm doing sky replacement on this. It's not interesting, you know? And again, we're talking about mise en scène. You want to make sure that everything in your image is interesting, that everything is it gives you something. Don't know what, but gives you something. So there we go. And there's not a lot we have to do with that. We're going to adjust the lighting a little bit. I'm going to boost the color temperature up a little bit, making just soft changes that, and they're changes that I think work. They're not necessarily changes that you might think work, but for me, they work for me. And this is something else that I want to let you know. No, I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to okay that and let Photoshop do its thing. When you're changing stuff like this, what you think about it and the way that you think about how it's working is far more important than what anybody else thinks about it. Yes, you will get critics who may like or dislike what you're doing. That's fine. Let that happen, but do your thing, because that's more important. Getting your thing right is more important. Okay, back to the picture. So there we go. We've got it. We've done it, haven't we? Isn't that right? No, it's not. Why isn't it right? Well, there's a few things. I don't know if you notice it. I definitely notice it. There are a few things here that do not sit quite right with me. And first of all, it's the fact that this lion doesn't appear to be matching into the background as much as it probably should. So what we're going to do, we're going to close down this sky replacement group that it creates. And we're going to do a few things. First of all, I'm going to go up to adjustments, and I'm going to go up to photo filter, and above the sky replacement group we're going to add a photo filter like that, and that starts to pull stuff together because you start to have this kind of layer of a color over a thing. But as you can see, the lion still doesn't look quite like we were after. So if I go back to where we were over here, this is what we're trying to get, or something akin to this is what we're trying to get. And there's things that we need to do. We need to pull out some of the reds. We need to, there's just a few changes that we need to make here, softening the image overall, but again, little secret to doing that. So that's where we are right now. And you can see this is a different picture. Right. Go to there. We're going to go to this layer. We're going to go to adjustments. We're going to go to hue and saturation. And I love using hue and saturation because it does some amazing things. First things first, we're going to pull this down this way a little bit, and we're going to take the lightness down a little bit because we want it to kind of match the sky. Because again, you've got a sky here. It's a nice dramatic sky, but what would the rest of the lighting look like if that were the case? And then we actually want to desaturate this just a touch. And you can take it down quite a way and then start to bring it up just to give it that look of desaturation. I'm also going to go into, now which one was it? It was selective color? Yeah, it was selective color, I think. There we go. And we're going to play around with this cyan. And there. And you see what this is doing? You can add in red into this by changing the cyan. So that's all the way up. That's all the way down. You want it kind of in the middle of there. So we're going to pull that back so that it's about there. And again, I'm just applying this to the lion itself. And we can still go into hue and saturation, look, and take the saturation out a little bit if we need to. But actually, I'm quite happy with that. Now, again, going back to the original, this is where we kind of end up. And this is where we are right now. So we're very nearly there. The only thing that we might want to do on this is, before we get to the photo filter, let's add another adjustment. And we're going to go into our curves right now. And we're going to do the same trick that we did before. So we're going to click on here. And we want our input here to be 62 and 62. And then this bottom one, we're just going to pull up a little bit. And again, just soften those shadows out just a touch. It doesn't need to be a lot. Look, so the output here is just 9, which isn't very much at all. You're not making sort of dramatic changes to the picture. But have a look down here whilst I change this. So you change it to there. There's that. It gives it more definition. And then you take it out and push it too far, and it goes like that. But just making these nice subtle changes. I often find, actually, that the subtler the change, the more impact it has overall. It's just a thing. Lots of little subtle changes don't necessarily draw your eye, but they really give you a good kind of understanding of everything. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling. Okay, so we've got our picture, and it's pretty much there. It's pretty much done. But before we end this, before we say here, there is the picture and what we've done with it, I am going to now, and I should point out, I spent so much longer doing this the first time around. I think it took me about 3 hours playing around with Photoshop in order to get to where we were. I added in textures over the top. I added all sorts of things to see if I could get something that I was happy with. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is we are going to go to our Pro Panel again, and Pro Panel's got these really lovely filters that I absolutely adore. One of them is Lux. I'm going to click on Lux. Look at what that does. And again, before, after, it just gives everything such a lovely little punch that I'm going to keep it on that. And the other thing I'm going to do, and this is the secret sauce really of the final image, is I'm going to click on this button here and add the Autumn effect. So this is going to process for a second. It's going to make a blur image. It's going to change some layers. And then there we go. That's our final image. Now, again, that's before, that's after. That's before, and that's after. And what Autumn is doing there is it allows you to keep some of the sharpness, but at the same time, it's giving you a more dreamy look to the picture. Now, this isn't the level that I left Autumn at before. So Autumn, when it comes in, the opacity layer is set to 15%. I'm going to change this to 8. And so what that's going to do is it's going to take some of that dreaminess away and leave us with a much sharper image. And you can see that around the eyes. So there we go. We have gone from the picture that you saw before to that in a matter of 20 minutes and me rambling. So that's it. I'm really pleased with the way that this turned out. I'm really pleased with the way the original turned out. And you'll be able to see that on Instagram soon. I'm going to put if you want to see bigger images, I'll put it on Instagram. I'll post it to the community tab if I remember, because I often forget because I am a moron, which goes to prove that even a moron can make good pictures once in a while. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you've liked it. If you do, please, big thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments. Obviously, if you want to see more of this sort of thing, then again, leave that comment in the comments as well. I will say, for many people, this is going to be digital art as opposed to photography. But for me and for a lot of other people, this is photography. It's just another way of using the tools that you're given. it's a conversation for another time. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you get something out of it. And at some point, what I might do is go a little bit further into this Pro panel, what it can do, whether or not, because I would absolutely recommend it. I think it's phenomenal, but you don't need it for everything. Is it worth your while? Perhaps, I don't know. If you'd like to see that, let me know below and I will make sure that I prioritize that video. I should point out that this video was made because somebody asked for it. And I'm all about making stuff that people want to see. So if there's stuff that you want to cover, if there's something that you're unsure of, if there's a topic that you think, I really need some information about that, or I want your take on it, do let me know, because there's a very good chance it'll end up being a video. Until next time, thanks ever so much for coming along. Please do like, share, and obviously if you're new here, hit subscribe, the bell icon, and the little notifications tab, the all notifications tab that pops up in the end. I will see you on the next video, and of course, until next time, keep taking those photos.